think that's the unique advantage of intro stars, because you want to learn the art and craft of being a founder. But there's nothing like standing on stage yourself, doing a 1 or 3 minute pitch to an audience. And I like to only recommend people where I genuinely...
Hey, this is Mike from Intro Stars, and today we're very excited to bring you a brand new episode of the Super Connectors podcast in New York. For today's episode, we've got the ultimate mega super connector of the world, the one and only Anthony Rose from SeedLegals. I've run into Anthony hundreds of times at events all over London, and now in New York, we keep running into each other as well. So it's like a magic miracle for us to be in the same room once again for this podcast. Anthony, so good to have you here.
Thank you so much for inviting me.
Anthony, you are at so many events. Everyone knows you in the startup world. How would you define the term super connector?
I think of myself as an inadvertent super connector. I didn't aspire to that. It's not my job. But at SeedLegals, most UK startups are on SeedLegals, and I talk to lots and lots of founders at events. People ping me. I don't know any other company where people ping the CEO as often for advice and so on. And it means I kind of know everyone. A founder on SeedLegals said they do protein food for humans. In other words, eating crickets. It's not the kind of startup you come across regularly, right? You've probably never heard of such a thing. And I could tell them, you know what? I know 2 people who are doing insect protein for humans as well. And I figured at that point, it had to be like the super connector. Another example, I was talking to someone in Texas who's doing geothermal energy for data centers, because the data centers are going to use unbelievable amounts of power. Yeah. And then a day or 2 later, I was talking to somebody who said he invests in, different kinds of sustainable energy production. And I could go, wait, let me do an intro. So I love the fact that because you speak to lots of people, you are able to connect them. Sometimes people come to me, but actually I like it even more when I connect people and join the dots without people even asking.
Especially when it's super niche, like cricket food, like geothermal energy production. The more niche it is, the more it's exciting to connect the dots and find these really unique people working in these really niche industries, right?
And actually, I think that's the unique advantage of intro stars, if I can jump to that. Why? Because everyone knows super connectors, right? But what you often want is something niche. So you want to sell carpets in Indiana. You want someone to introduce you to carpet resellers or wholesalers in Indiana. How are you going to find that person? Obviously you don't. So you need a platform that's going to help you. And I think that's the value add, which is the small number of super connectors you do know may be able to take your call and help you on the things in their area, but they're not going to, help on all the other things besides. So you're much better off with a platform.
Yeah, and really putting it out there, what you're looking for, the more specific you can be about who you want to meet, the more super connectors will makes it easy for them to make that introduction for you, because they can look through their database of contacts and find that niche person doing exactly what you're looking for. So really putting it out there, I think, is a game changer for sure.
Now, what I want to jump to is the formula, which is if you reach out to a super connector or connect to make an intro for you, how you don't screw it up afterwards. If someone says, connect me with a VC or an investor, it's just too hard. I mean, I know thousands, which means I could never think of any. So I say, you've got to do your homework, come up with a small list, and if I know them, then I'll be happy to do a warm intro. But you also have to help me by giving me a few lines that I can send to them as if I was to write to them myself. So if you send me your pitch deck, it's no use. I'm not going to send them your pitch deck. I need you to tell me something like, hey, please meet so-and-so. We've known each other for a while. He's working on or she's working on something that's really interesting. I thought you guys might like to connect. A big problem, I think, to solve is it's firstly about making the connection, but secondly, how as a founder, you don't mess it up. The reach out, whether it's a warm intro through a connector or you've reached out directly, it's to get the person to follow up with you. So don't say, I'm raising 10 million, here's my pitch deck. Go, hey, I see you've invested in some of these companies before. That's in our area. We're working on something new. I'd love to tell you more. And your only goal is to get them to go, okay, great. And now the door's open to the next step.
So you want a teaser, and you want the person looking for an introduction to give you that teaser. As an introducer, you shouldn't do all the hard work yourself. They have to do it for you by writing that teaser for you, So you can just copy and paste it, right? When you ask the person for an introduction.
Exactly. I'm like this, there's a switchboard in the phone exchange. And if you route me to the right place and give me the right packet of information to send, make it easy. Of course, I'm still going to filter it, because if you ask, hey, Anthony, I'm raising 200K, can I get an invite or an intro to Index Ventures? I'm not going to do it, because it's a complete waste of time. The last company they just sold for 17 billion, they're not interested in 200K investments. If you write to me saying, I'd like intros to, the top tier VCs, and you're super early stage, it's like, dude, you're way mismatched. You need to find people that are likely to fit. Otherwise, I'm burning my social capital by doing an intro, so I'm not going to do it.
And to be honest, Anthony, what you put your finger on is very sharp, because I get this issue all the time where people ask me for intros, which I love to do. However, I always ask the person asking for an intro, please write a short paragraph about yourself, which I can copy and paste to the intro. And most people are really bad at this. As you said, they send me a super long thing with 10 paragraphs with their pitch deck, and I tell them this is garbage. Send me something short, 5-10 words, which is really compelling, like a teaser, to get the person excited to meet you. And I think most people really have not learned the art of storytelling.
The other thing is, I like to only recommend people where I genuinely have used their service as an end user, or I know them for a while. I'd love to help. If they're a SeedLegals customer, that's also a filter. And that's one of the advantages of using SeedLegals, because it itself is a super connector community. We've got founder groups on WhatsApp. We've got obviously events, we do all our events. So actually being part of the community is really important. And one of the connections I also do is, people often ask, how do I do research for customers? Well, actually, posting it yourself in a founder group is a way of spraying and praying, in a sense.
Yep.
But it's also really useful. You'll get feedback, and there you'll get self-selecting feedback. There, you also mustn't screw it up. You mustn't go, here's my LinkedIn thing, call me. You must go, hey, I'm working on something that's been a problem for a while. Put the personal passion into it, explain and show how you're helping people, and then they'll call you afterwards.
Yeah, and that's a great lesson in general. Every time you introduce yourself in a WhatsApp group or in person, make sure you do it in a smart, exciting way, so people are excited to learn more about you. It's more about how you help others, how you could help them. So you're absolutely right. The art of storytelling your own story to get people excited to work with you. I'm using SeedLegals myself for our own fundraise, so obviously very excited to work with you. You're obviously on IntroStars as well, so we use each other's product, which is incredible. So can you tell us a bit more about your journey to become this super connector?
So I think it probably goes back to the software developer side of me, which is, I hate doing anything more than once. What I realized is, when people called us at SeedLegals asking for, how do I do SEIS, or, what valuation should I raise at, my mantra became, the third time someone asks you a question, write an article or do a video. And then, of course, I would share that on LinkedIn, and then you'd see that your LinkedIn count would go up and people would view it. And then it's a bit of a drug. You wake up in the morning going, that post yesterday, how many views did it get? But it's really valuable, because you're building your own social brand, which gives you a wider voice when you want to announce things. It builds your company's brand, and it actually saves your customer support team a heap of time, because people are seeing it, and you get a lot more inbound, because Google does a great job SEOing posts. So it starts by solving a particular problem of people not having to ask me questions. And I think my data points are, I would say 80% of the time people ask questions in founder groups, I've done an article or a video on it.
Yeah.
But then, of course, now you start having a decent sized following, which is great. But once you do have a decent following, then you start having a bit of a social responsibility, or a social worry that now when you post things, should you start posting on things outside of your core area? So, if you know SEIS, you're going to come to me, or funding rounds. But now the government's doing things in the UK that, are messing up UK startup ecosystem. Should I post about it? And the irony is, if I post about a founder interview or something on LinkedIn, it'll get 5,000 views. If I post something that disparages the UK government, 250,000 views. The reason I'm mentioning this is, anyone who starts building a following is now thrust into this moral or social dilemma. Do you use your increased voice to just stick to your knitting, or do you start expanding outside of it? And if you expand out of it, you're going to start potentially alienating some people.
The more people you know, the more people listen to what you're saying. And sometimes, there's a bit of a gray area. Should you be completely open about all your political opinions and religious opinions? or should you keep it to yourself and talk only about business? And, people want to know the real person behind it. So it's always a bit of a gray area, but makes it interesting and challenging. Let's go back to introductions and referrals in the context of startup founders. Startup founders go to lots of networking events because they're always looking for referrals, introductions, etc. What advice do you have for startup founders who want to start building their network?
Founders are often introverts. They're like nothing better to sit at home, listen to some music, and write emails or code. But you got to get out there, because if you don't do that, no one's going to find your product, no one's going to join your company, no one's going to invest in you. So you have to get out, even if it's hard. And that means going to in-person events, pitch events, because you want to learn the art and craft of being a founder. And yes, you can read articles and you can watch videos, but there's nothing like standing on stage yourself, doing a 1 or 3 minute pitch to an audience of a few hundred people. Go out and do founder events, in-person events. New York has the most amazing event scene. I mean, you can do 4 in-person events per day. I'm a bit sad that London hasn't got as many at SeedLegals. I keep wanting to do more. Then you can also see how you benchmark yourself versus other founders, because being a founder is often learning how to project and how to sell. I was at a pitch event last night, and the people pitching were kind of like talking to the people in the room like they're their friends. But, if you're in New York or London, it's about dialing it up. You want to sell the dream. You have to not only say what you do, but you have to say why people want it, why an investor should invest. And it's all about, taking this amazing vision and being able to execute it.
But it's also about the bigger picture. I think when I talk to founders, if they go too quickly to the nitty-gritty detail of their startup, I get bored. I want to hear the bigger picture. Like, why are they doing it? What's their mission? What's their purpose in life? And then, yes, they can talk about the startup they're building to get there. Very often, they start right away with the nitty-gritty detail, and I get lost in the story, right? And I think that's a great skill to learn for a founder.
I agree entirely. And it all comes home to roost, so to speak, in the intro that you're asking somebody to do or that you're doing. Because let's say you are doing some insurance tech thing. If your intro says we're using AI and blockchain to revolutionize insurance, the investor or your customers hit delete already or moved on from your website because it's definitely boring. But if you say, we'll save you 30% on your home insurance starting next month, click here to book a demo or sign up now, suddenly you've got somebody's attention. So you want to show, whether it be to your consumer or an investor intro, the big problem you're solving. Leave it as a teaser. You don't need to tell them the TAM and the SAM and the SOM and all this other stuff. That comes on episode 3 of your Netflix drama. Episode 1 is to end on the cliffhanger where they want more.
So what do you think of paying for referrals? So startup founders are looking for clients, and some of them are smart enough to say, I need super connectors to open those doors for me. And by the way, if they introduce me to a client and I close a $50K deal, I'm happy to pay them 5% or 10%, whatever it is. What do you think of that business model in the startup ecosystem?
Well, of course, your goal is that you don't need to pay anybody, right? Whether it's a crowdfunding platform or an SEIS fund or an advisor, if you don't need to pay, that's better. But the problem is, not everyone has all those connections and not everyone knows investors and so on. So you often need help. And if you use a crowdfunding platform, it's going to cost you 6% of the amount raised or whatever. If you're looking for an introduction, you're going to need to pay. It's a cost of business and it makes sense. Remember also, when you're going to introducers, you may also be going to them as people are going to give you advice on a particular sector and so on. So there are many things of value that you'll get. So if, someone asks me for advice, I don't need the £100 or whatever it's going to cost. I'm using it as a filter so that there's not huge numbers of people calling me, and the ones who do are serious.
I mean, at the end of the day, it's about fair compensation for the value they bring to you. So if a startup founder gets an introduction which ends up in a 50K deal or 100K deal, it's kind of fair compensation for the introducer to get a percentage of that. So it's not so much that they're greedy or they're all money driven. It's not that. It's about they've helped you and you want to help them back. And it's just a fair compensation for everyone involved. And so I think that's the idea of this model of referral commissions, is to help everyone in the ecosystem may be the best introducer they can be and encourage more people to go out of their way to make good introductions.
I think that's good. My model at SeedLegals, SeedLegals customer, and then you get unlimited help and support. And if you're a SeedLegals customer, I'm there to support you. Separately, there's pay to play, so to speak. But in those cases, I may well give the amount to charity because, that's not my model to get out of bed and do it. But I'm delighted to help people and it goes to charity.
That's amazing. So where can people follow your adventures right now? You're always so prolific. So where can people follow you right now, your latest adventures?
Well, LinkedIn is the way to go. Anthony Rose on LinkedIn. I posted a great deal of stuff there, and you can also reach me, Anthony at SeedLegals.com. Always delighted to help. Sometimes it'll turn into an intro, and sometimes you need to go through intro stars. So
Absolutely. Well, Anthony, thank you so much for your time today. You're being very generous. Great to see you again in New York.
likewise.
And I'm sure I'm going to run into you a lot in the next couple of days.
Exactly.
And back in London as well.
Amazing. Thank you
so much. Thank you.